Very good morning to all of you. So today's class is about the drugs acting on renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. We shall be discussing part 1 of this class today. So in this class, we shall be concentrating on a brief overview about the renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. Then we shall be discussing in detail regarding the pharmacology of ACE inhibitors in terms of their mechanism of action, actions, uses, and adverse drug reactions. So, all of you, I think, would have already dealt or at least read about renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system in the first year itself. So, here, before we start a topic on the drugs acting as inhibitors for this system, we shall just have a brief overview of this system as a recap from your previous classes. So this is abbreviated as RAAS. So this is a system which is involved in the regulation of the electrolyte balance, blood volume, and the blood pressure in the body. So we'll discuss the steps of the RAS pathway. So this pathway begins with the synthesis of renin. The renin is synthesized from juxtaglomerular cells of kidney. And which are the stimulus for the secretion or synthesis of renin from the kidney? These are a fall in the blood volume, a fall in the blood pressure, a loss of sodium and chloride, and renal ischemia. So whenever these things are there, that is a fall in blood volume, fall in blood pressure, fall in sodium chloride levels, or this renal ischemia, then this causes a low glomerular afferent pressure, low macular densa sodium, and enhanced sympathetic activity. And these result in the greater synthesis of renin from the JG cells of kidney. The first step of RAS pathway is the synthesis of renin under the following stimuli. Next, we go to the next steps. So this renin will act on the angiotensinogen. This is the noctapeptide which is generated in the plasma, and by renin this is converted to angiotensin 1. This is supposed to be the rate limiting step of the RAS pathway. Okay, next one. Angiotensin 1 is then converted to angiotensin 2. This is a very important step by an enzyme that is called as angiotensin converting enzyme or ACE enzyme. The other name is kinase 2 enzyme. So you can see that this enzyme is involved in the conversion of angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. Also remember at this point that kinase 2 or the enzyme is also involved in the breakdown of kinins. That is example bradykinin. So it is also involved in the breakdown of the kinins or the bradykinin. Now, another thing that you have to remember is that the main functions of the RAS pathway, it is mainly exerted through the angiotensin 2. And this angiotensin 2 exerts main actions through the AT1 receptors. It can act on two types of receptors, AT1 receptors and AT2 receptors. But the main functions of the RAS system is exerted through the AT1 receptors. So this angiotensin 2 is very important because it is the molecule which exerts the main functions of the RAS system. Now, angiotensin 2, the action of it ends when it is converted to or when it's metabolized to angiotensin 3 and angiotensin 4 by an enzyme aminopeptidase. This angiotensin 3 and 4 are very less potent when compared to angiotensin 2. These are further broken down into inactive fragments by angiotensinases. So just remember, angiotensin 2 is the principal molecule which exerts the main actions of RAS. So we'll see what are the actions of angiotensin 2. So it principally acts on the CVS, adrenal cortex, and the kidney. And these actions, which I'm going to discuss, are mainly mediated through the AT1 receptors. AT1 receptor. Okay, so on the CVS, it causes vasoconstriction. So whenever there's a vasoconstriction, there's an increase in the total peripheral resistance, and this will increase the BP. So you can see that the first stimulus that caused the starting of the pathway was a fall in the BP. And finally, we are ending up as with an increase in BP. That is how the BP is regulated. Okay, so whenever there was a fall, it finally ended up in the increase in the BP. This angiotensin 2 can also increase the cardiac and the vascular hypertrophy, remodeling, and apoptosis. So hypertrophy, all of you know what it is. Then remodeling is the abnormal mass distribution in the heart. Okay, that is not a wanted effect. It is an unwanted effect. It usually occurs or accompanies cardiac failure. So remodeling and apoptosis. This is an unwanted effect of angiotensin 2. On the adrenal cortex, it increases the synthesis and release of aldosterone. This aldosterone, as you already know, it acts on the distal tubule of the kidney and promotes salt and water reabsorption, and this causes an increase in the blood volume. And this already you have seen, this was the stimuli in the beginning, a decrease in the blood volume. So here we have an increase in the blood volume as a result of the action of angiotensin 2. On the kidney, the action can be indirect, that is through the aldosterone, which you already saw, that is on the distal tubule, or it can have a direct effect also on the proximal tubule of the kidney by increasing the salt and water reabsorption. So this can also increase the blood volume. So the ultimate effects of the angiotensin 2 are increase in the BP and increase in the blood volume. So already I have told you that the initial stimulus was a fall in the BP or a fall in the blood volume, or whenever there's a change in the sodium levels, okay, sodium levels in the body. So that is how the whole pathway began, and the pathway finally ended up in the increase in the BP and increase in the blood volume, and even in the increased absorption of sodium and chloride salt. So you can see here that the acute rise in the BP is mainly by the vasoconstriction, and the more long-lasting effect on the BP is by the action of increasing the salt and water retention by the kidney. So you have seen already the two actions mainly, that is the vasoconstriction and the increased salt and water retention by the kidney. Now the BP is now all elevated. Now there should be a feedback inhibition, otherwise this process will go on continuing. So we have to put a check on the process. So how is it happening? The rise in BP that has now occurred will inhibit the further renin release, and this is called as the long loop negative feedback. Also, the increase in the blood volume by the action of the kidney will inhibit the further renin release. It is called as the short loop negative feedback mechanism. So this complete system is very well arranged. So whenever there's a fall in the BP, the angiotensin 2 will be finally released, and then it will cause an increase in the BP, and again there's a feedback check on the further release of the renin. So this is a summary. You can see here the first thing, all the stimuli which I have discussed has caused the synthesis of renin from JG cells, which will convert angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1, rate limiting step. Angiotensin 1 is converted to angiotensin 2 by the important enzyme that is the ACE, other name is kinase 2. This angiotensin 2 is the main molecule which exerts its actions in the form of vasoconstriction, which causes rise in BP, and sodium and water retention by the kidney, either through aldosterone or by the direct action, and this will cause an increase in the blood volume. Okay, and then you can see the rise in BP will inhibit the renin release, further renin release. This is called as the long loop negative inhibition, and the increased blood volume will also further inhibit the renin release. It is called as a short loop negative inhibition. This is the action of angiotensin 2, which is mainly done by the acting on the angiotensin 1 receptor, AT1 receptor. The angiotensin 2 doesn't act for a long time as it is metabolized to less potent metabolites, that is angiotensin 3 and 4, and these are further metabolized into inactive fragments by angiotensinases. This is the summary of the RAS pathway. Now let us look at the drugs that are inhibiting the RAS pathway. So the sympathetic blockers, example beta blockers, adrenergic neuron blockers, they decrease the renin release. So in the previous slide I have told you sympathetic activity also is required as a stimulus for the production of renin. So this can also sympathetic blockers will inhibit the renin release. Then there are direct renin inhibitors. So they will directly block the actions of renin, that is conversion of angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1 will be blocked, and the further steps will be obviously blocked. Then we have got the ACE inhibitors, which will prevent the generation of the active principle angiotensin 2. You can see this conversion will not happen. Angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2 will not happen because the ACE is inhibited by the drugs called as ACE inhibitors. Then we have got the next class of drugs called as the angiotensin receptor blockers. So I told you angiotensin acts through the AT1 receptors. Now these drugs will block those receptors. So the angiotensin 2 will not be able to exert its actions like vasoconstriction and the salt and water retention. The last one is the aldosterone antagonist, like spironolactone. They will block the aldosterone receptors. Okay, that is the these are the drugs which inhibit the RAS. So in this section, we are going to discuss mainly about the ACE inhibitors, and in the next class, that is a part 2, we'll be discussing about the ARB. So these are the two principal drug categories which we will be concentrating in this chapter. So we'll proceed to the first class, that is ACE inhibitors. Now, under this class, captopril is the first the drug which was introduced, and this is considered as a prototype drug of this class. So we will be discussing the ACE inhibitors with relation to captopril because it is considered as a prototype drug of this class. The other ACE inhibitors are enalapril, lisinopril, perindopril, ramipril, and so on. Now we'll see what is captopril. The captopril contains a sulfhydryl group in the molecule, and the mechanism of action. So already you know ACE enzyme was involved in the conversion of angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. That was the main action of the ACE. So if this enzyme is inhibited, so what will happen? The conversion of angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2 will not occur. So all the actions that were done by the angiotensin 2 will not be occurring because the formation, there is no conversion, there is no synthesis of angiotensin 2. And also at this point, I'll tell you that in the previous slide, we talked about the fact that ACE also causes a degradation of bradykinin to inactive bradykinin components. Now, when ACE is inhibited by these drugs, ACE inhibitors, the breakdown of bradykinin also will not happen. That means what? The levels of bradykinin will increase. Okay, now at this point, just remember one more thing, that angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2 conversion occurs by ACE. That is called as the ACE dependent pathway. And there are other pathways also, which we will not be discussing, which cause the production of angiotensin 2. At this point, you only remember the conversion of angiotensin 1 to 2 by the ACE. That is the main area where we are concentrating. But there are other pathways also which result in the formation of angiotensin 2, which we are not discussing at this point. So how does the actions of ACE inhibitors occur? So now angiotensin 2 is not formed. So what will happen? There won't be any vasoconstriction. So we get the dilatation of arterioles, and as a result, what happens? It decreases the TPR. So I missed the arrow here. Decreases the TPR, or the total peripheral resistance. It also causes a decrease in the aldosterone production, hence a decrease in the sodium and water retention. And also, since there's a decrease in the degradation of bradykinin, the levels of bradykinin increase, and bradykinin is also a vasodilator. So all these things, factors, will be resulting in a decreased BP. So you can see here the main function or the main action of ACE inhibitor drugs is to decrease the BP. They can also reverse the cardiac and vascular hypertrophy and remodeling, which is induced by the angiotensin 2. So mainly decrease in the BP and reverses the cardiac and vascular hypertrophy and remodeling, which is induced by the angiotensin 2. Now we look at the pharmacokinetics of captopril. It has got good oral absorption. The penetration in the brain is poor. The food interferes with the absorption of captopril. It is partly metabolized and partly excreted unchanged in the urine. The T-half is 2 hours, but the action can last up to 12 hours maximum. Now we look at the adverse drug reactions, very important. So you can see here, since it decreases the BP, it can cause a hypotension also. Okay, because sometimes the exaggerated fall in blood pressure can occur, and this can result in a hypotension. And usually this is occurring only with the first dose and not with the subsequent doses. It can cause an increase in the potassium levels, that is hyperkalemia. One of the very characteristic feature associated with this drug is the development of brassy cough. The brassy cough can appear anytime from 1 to 8 weeks from starting the drug. And this is occurring mainly because of the inhibition of the bradykinin breakdown. Now, bradykinin is one of the factors responsible for the cough. Because the bradykinin levels are increasing with the use of ACE inhibitors, the resultant cough can occur. So whenever a patient develops the cough, you have to stop the ACE inhibitors and shift on to some alternative drug. You cannot continue ACE inhibitors once the brassy cough has developed, and this cough doesn't respond to cough syrups or other cough medications. The other areas are rashes, urticaria, and angioedema. Angioedema, you already know, it is the swelling of the lips, the larynx, and all, and it can sometimes lead to respiratory failure also if laryngeal edema is associated. Then dysgeusia is an alteration of the taste sensation, and it is a reversible thing. Once you stop ACE inhibitors, the dysgeusia also will disappear. It is a teratogenic drug and it should not be given to pregnant women. It can cause fetal growth retardation, hypoplasia of organs, and even fetal death. Other areas are headache, dizziness, nausea, bowel upset, proteinuria. And one of the areas that is seen mainly in patients with bilateral renal artery stenosis is acute renal failure. So once again, hypotension, hyperkalemia, brassy cough, rashes, angioedema, dysgeusia, fetopathic effect, headache, proteinuria, acute renal failure. These are the adverse drug reactions of ACE inhibitors. Now we look at the drug interactions of ACE inhibitors. So ACE inhibitors, when they are given along with diuretics, the diuretics can increase the hypotensive action of ACE inhibitors by depleting sodium. So the effect of ACE inhibitors is more in patients who are sodium depleted. Now diuretics, by causing a depletion of sodium, can increase the hypotensive action. So there can be an exaggerated chance of hypotension. The same thing that is with NSAIDs, it will decrease the hypotensive action. That means it will somewhat counteract the BP lowering action of ACE inhibitors by retaining salt and water. That's the opposite effect of ACE inhibitors. Potassium supplements, potassium sparing diuretics, and NSAIDs, they can increase hyperkalemia because all these drugs are associated with hyperkalemia. And I already told you ACE inhibitors are also associated with hyperkalemia. So when all these drugs are given concurrently, they can cause an exaggerated hyperkalemia, which can lead to cardiac arrhythmias also. Antacids reduce the bioavailability of ACE inhibitors by reducing the absorption. Lithium, an antimanic drug, can reduce the clearance of the ACE inhibitors from the kidney and can lead to its toxicity. Now let us have a look at the other ACE inhibitors before we go on to the uses of ACE inhibitors. So enalapril, this is one of the very important drugs of the ACE inhibitors, which is very popular, and this is a prodrug. Okay, so captopril was not a prodrug. Enalapril is a prodrug. It is converted in the body to active form enalaprilat. So NENALA is missed actually by mistake. So enalaprilat in liver. The advantages of enalapril over captopril are the following. It is more potent than captopril. So you can reduce the dose of enalapril. The dose that is used for enalapril is comparatively less than that used for captopril because it is more potent. The absorption of enalapril is not affected by food. The onset of action of enalapril is slower because it is a prodrug. It needs time to get converted into the active metabolite. So the onset of action is slower. So there's a less chance of first dose hypotension. So whenever the drug starts acting very rapidly, there's a chance of first dose hypotension. When the drug is starting its action slowly, then there is less chance of first dose hypotension. Also, this drug acts for a longer duration of time. So you can give one single dose per day. So okay, so this drug is having a slower onset of action as well as it acts for a longer duration of time. So it requires only one dose per day. So this is more patient compliant. Even the ADRs like rashes, dysgeusia, etc. are less frequent with enalapril. However, the other ADRs like cough is almost of the similar frequency as seen in captopril. The other AC inhibitors are lisinopril, perindopril, and ramipril. Of this, all are prodrugs except lisinopril. So we have discussed AC inhibitors, two AC inhibitors which are not prodrugs, that is captopril and the lisinopril. All these have got a slow onset of action and long duration of action, and hence the first dose hypertension is comparatively less in all these cases. In case of ramipril, you have to remember one more thing, that it has got an extensive tissue distribution. So the T half is somewhat prolonged because of it takes time to get relief from the tissues. So this has got a comparatively very long T half. Lisinopril, though it is not a prodrug, the action is slow. This is mainly because of incomplete oral absorption. It is not because of the slow conversion, but it is because of this slow absorption from the stomach. Now, this is just a chart which is comparing the pharmacokinetics of AC inhibitors and how their peak time to act, their duration of action, the daily dose and all. So you can just see captopril 25 to 150 mg, whereas you can see enalapril just requires 2.5 to 440 mg, very less compared to that of captopril because it is very potent when compared to captopril. Also, you can see the excretion is mainly renal for all these things. And you can see in the case of ramipril, it's very long duration because of the extensive tissue distribution. Now we'll finally come to the uses of AC inhibitors. The principal use of AC inhibitors is in the case of hypertension. It is first line drug in hypertension, and the advantages are that it is free of adverse effects that are seen usually with the other antihypertensive drugs. So you have not studied the antihypertensive drugs as of now, but when you study, you will see that the other antihypertensive drugs might be associated with postural hypotension, electrolyte imbalances, rebound hypertension on stoppage, and so on. And these are not there in the case of ACE inhibitors. They are even safe in patients who are having a concurrent diseases or comorbidities like asthma, diabetes, PVD. So if a patient is there who is having asthma and hypertension, you can very safely give ACE inhibitors for the control of blood pressure. It also reverses left ventricular hypertrophy, which is seen in hypertensives. These are the advantages of using ACE inhibitors in hypertension. It is also used in congestive heart failure. Again, it is the first line drug here. It produces symptomatic relief by reducing afterload and preload in CHF patients. Also, it has got some long-term benefits. That is, when you are using these AC inhibitors for a long duration in CHF patients, it reverses or it inhibits the cardiac hypertrophy or remodeling or apoptosis that is induced by the angiotensin II. That is also very beneficial in patients who are having CHF. It can be started in myocardial infarction soon when the infarction is evolving and can be continued for many weeks or years. And this also reduces mortality, early as well as late mortality and morbidity in the cases of myocardial infarction. It is also used for as prophylaxis in other high cardiovascular risk subjects. Other than that, the cardiac diseases, it is also used for diabetic nephropathy. It is supposed to prevent or delay the end-stage renal disease in diabetics. It is also used in scleroderma crisis. So scleroderma crisis, scleroderma is a condition which affects the connective tissues. It causes a very tightened tissues of the face and the other parts of the body. So crisis means there's a sudden rise in the BP and renal impairment in scleroderma patients. And this crisis can be tided by the AC inhibitors because this crisis is supposed to be mediated by angiotensin II. So this can be used in scleroderma crisis. So with that, we complete this topic. This topic is supposed to be continued in the next part. Okay, so before that, you should revise this and make your regular notes after referring the textbook. And so be prepared with the first part when you come to attend the second part. Thank you all for your patient hearing.